guys, Hannah Hembree Bell here with my BFF and my husband.
Awesome. Hi guys, I'm Lincoln-Goldfinch, and tell us who we've got.
Yeah, well, first we're here with Law Moms Out Loud.
Yes.
Part 2,
Second
episode, coming at you live. We're in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
We're here for a work conference that's like morning conference, afternoon fun. Kind of the best combo that you can get going.
Mm-hmm.
And we have our special guest. I'm a little partial. Probably my fave guest we can ever have. This is Drew Bell. He is my husband. He's probably our most handsome guest too. And Drew, I'll introduce you a little bit and then you can tell us some things. So Drew is also a lawyer. So he's a law dad. I guess law paw, they call it, right? I don't think the law paw community is as active as the law ma community. I don't know, Drew, maybe you can do something to change that.
Who knows? Maybe it starts today.
Yeah, that's it. Drew's the law paw. He's a recent law paw as far as we have a little penny together. So Drew is a lawyer in a big law firm. I hope some of his law firm friends, I heard him on a Zoom call today, and I was like, hey, Drew's not going to tell you all this, but he's on our show, and y'all all need to watch him. Send an email. So if you're a KNS person, you should post in the comments so we can give a shout out. But anyway.
Yeah. Oh, and I should say, comment, like, give us some reactions. I'm watching everything here, and ask us questions because Drew wants your questions. So.
Drew's favorite thing in life to do is to answer other people's questions. So you'll be really doing him a favor. So anyway, Drew works at a big fancy law firm, I call it, doing big fancy cases that are worth like bajillions of dollars and whatnot. Very smart lawyer. Now, that is not even his number one best skill, and he is very good at that. As far as his highest and best use, I think, is his trip planning expertise. And the reason why we thought of him, look, we're on a trip, right? So that makes sense. We also need a guest, and he came with us. So he wins by default, but also because really, honestly, he's so good at this. And the reason why I thought of Drew for this topic is because in our own life, now every trip we go on, no matter what the situation is, once anyone knows Drew is coming, then they don't worry about planning because Drew's in charge. So Drew, you're here. Anything else to add to like your intro stats?
No, just thank you very much for having me, of course. Very, very excited to be here. I like to think this makes me not only a law paw, but an honorary law mom.
Oh, we need a badge.
Or a coffee mug or something.
Hey, Kate's husband's here watching back behind the scenes. You can
come
do a quick cameo.
Josh,
he needs an honorary law mom badge also.
He does. He gets it.
And there's Josh.
Here's Josh bringing the beer.
Bringing the cool beer, the cool glasses. Yes, there we go. Okay, so our goal today is to talk about how to plan your next trip. And Kate, you want to talk about why this is so timely?
Well, this whole show, we're really excited. We've actually got guests booked up all the way through the month of June for the Law Moms show because there's so many topics of interest for our community, and we share so many interests. We have intimacy coaches coming to talk about, intimacy in marriage. We have recruiters coming to talk about like job searching.
Mentorship. Frank Ramos, if you're watching, shout out.
Yeah. So, and this is for me personally, this whole like trip planning business, I am not a trip planner. I really enjoy a well-planned trip, but I am like, I have a trip next week and I haven't even bought the plane tickets yet. You know what I mean? Like this is an area for me where like, I avoid it. I know I can do it, but there's a lot of things I don't know. And I have lived the experience of a poorly planned trip. That could have been so much better. And I think a lot of us share this, like we're busy. We've got all of our kids running around. We've got full-time jobs. We got to get away. We want to experience the world with our families. But it's like one more project and there are so many like pitfalls. And like, if, you can just fall into the trap of like the tourist, whatever, like if you hire a travel agent, they're just going to book you for the things that they get kickbacks on. That's been my experience. And then if you do it yourself and you don't do like the requisite amount of research, well, then you don't get the best experiences. So anyway, that's why we wanted to talk
and
about
I think another thing is, y'all, this seems like it should be simple. Like we can go argue complicated motions for summary judgment in front of federal court. Surely I can plan a trip to Mexico, right? And I think this is one of the things with this community that's so important to me and Kate. And we're both willing to be like, we literally don't know. And we literally suck at this. And it's not easy to do it well. So Drew, I think that's where you come in, right?
Okay.
And you can, I asked her to think about like sort of, we want to always do the conclusion first. So like with the idea of it's not easy to do this. So what's sort of the conclusion first in case anybody has to go and run to a lunch meeting, and then we'll sort of build out from there.
Right. And so you guys are absolutely right. This is not as straightforward as it maybe should be or seems like it should be. And there are a lot of pieces to it, and it is going to involve some work. And that is just sort of the reality. But you're going to have to do the work one way or the other.
Because you said about it being a skill.
That's right.
That's your
It's a skill.
conclusion, right?
This is just like anything else. It's just like learning a language or learning a musical instrument or anything else that you do in life, even arguing summary judgment motions. The more you do it and the more you pay attention to how you're doing it, the better you're going to get over time. You're also going to learn more about the people you travel with, what they like, what they don't like, what works for them, and what works for you all as a group.
Well, because Drew, I think this might be fun. We didn't talk about doing this. I hope it's okay.
We'll see.
Insider info.
Yes, I know.
coming at you.
Well, because I think the context of, look, have you all, I mean, you can say, you haven't always been the number one pro at this, right? Like when we were first dating, you want to talk about our first like trip to Paris, right? And how we sort of did it all wrong.
Sure, I'm not a pro at all.
Actually,
That's,
you're such a pro.
well, but that is what I think makes what I have to say somewhat helpful, I hope, because everything that I'm going to tell you is anything that anyone can do. It's not something that you need to be some kind of industry person or a former travel agent or anything, because I've never been any of those things. All I've ever been is married to Hannah, who hates this with a passion and has outsourced it for years and years and years.
Yeah.
And so I've, through experience, have gotten better at it. But as Hannah was suggesting, when we were first together, I still had to plan the trip, but I didn't necessarily
Because I wasn't going to.
I didn't necessarily know how to plan it for us. I knew how to plan it for me, but I didn't know how to plan it for us.
Well, and I can tell about that.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, I was like yesterday Drew and yesterday Hannah, and this was like pre-kids Drew, pre-husband Drew. Like I'm just a single guy with this woman with these 3 kids, and like we're going on our first big trip. And I'm from East Texas. People in East Texas don't just like always go to Paris. Okay, so this was pretty new for me to get to go to Paris. I mean, obviously, when you go, the only thing you do is you go to the Eiffel Tower and you like eat a crepe. Is how we'd say it, right? Like that's all I knew about it. So wasn't probably the most fair of like, I had no expectation, no idea what I wanted to do, but it was easy for me to kind of like be a little bit of a brat about how I wasn't liking part of how it went. And so, which is like very common for what I do sometimes. And you laughed a little too closely at that one. When we went, in Drew's mind, he did plan some parts. I think one thing from that trip, like we learned, is we didn't have dinner reservations. And I think you can tell some about this, but like not necessarily right now, but dinner reservations. So when it was time to come to dinner, we're like, what are we going to eat for dinner? But even more than that, like the day's activities, Drew's number one like trip thing to do, at least then, would have been like, oh my gosh, we're in Paris. Everything is old and awesome. Let's walk around. Rick Steves, in like these books we'll tell you about, has all these like walking tours. So cool. Let's lace up our sneakers, walk for like 1,000 miles and look at tons of statues of old dead people. That will be the best trip ever. So let me just tell my audience, Hannah, who's like schlepping around with me all day, lots of facts that I know about all these old dead people and all of these old churches and all of these battles. So fast forward, and there's like more to the story of this trip that I was telling you about, but anyway, fast forward to at the end of a long day, we'd been to Montmartre across the, right, that's not how you say it. So you anyway, across the, I don't know, river or somehow, you have to go someplace to get there in Paris. And by the end of the day, I'm sitting on this street side cafe, like number one best thing to do in those Europe cities, y'all, is sit in these like seats and you have an espresso and you pretend like you're not American for like a second and try to blend in. I do not blend in. Most of us don't blend in, but you were sitting there at the end of the day and I just sort of like Drew was talking about something, and I just kind of started crying like a lunatic. And I'm like, well, what did you want to do? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm just tired of walking everywhere all over the city. When are we going to sit still for like 1 second? So we realized like his idea of an ideal trip, my idea of an ideal trip were different. We didn't communicate that before. We had no idea until we sort of did it wrong. So anyway, just to kind of like give some context, if that's you, if your significant other thinks, or your friend or mom or whoever, this and you're that, Drew, maybe that's one of the ways to start is like, how do we, make those more of a Venn diagram or something?
Yeah, and some of this, you're right. Some of this you only learn through experience. You're just going to have to go and see. But the more you can talk about what everyone wants out of a trip up front, the better. And that way you can sort of plan to meet those goals and always have those goals in mind. Mm-hmm. So just ask each other, what exactly
is that step one? Is this step one?
No, I would say this is down a little bit on the list. But just to answer your question, talk about where, once you've decided where you're going to go, what exactly do you all want to get out of it?
Okay.
That's a great place to start once you're actually filling in your schedule.
Okay.
Can I take a pause? We have some comments. We have some reactions. Y'all give Drew your questions.
Yeah.
Like he really knows his stuff. I mean, you'll see in a minute when he starts giving us the goods. So Paula says trip planning king.
Yeah, he is. Paula knows.
With a little emoji. Maggie Ellis says so cute. And then Paula says she's so excited for all of our future shows. We got some good ones.
Good stuff coming.
Yeah.
All right, Drew. So why don't are we going to go in like a step by step? Like so let's say that there's a trip coming, like Kate has her trip coming. Where do you start?
Okay. Well, the first thing you have to do is decide, to the extent you have a decision to make, where you're going to go.
Okay.
Right?
Where are we going?
Now, some trips you don't have that decision to decide. Like here, we were coming here to Mexico for the conference. But if you just have a vacation to take in your life, you may have the entire world available to you. And so you have to first decide, where are you going to go? Now that is obvious, right? But I think a lot of people don't spend enough time thinking about that question. And there are a lot of things that go into that. I mean, first of all, I would say don't pre-commit to some idea that you have in your head. Just because you've always wanted to go to Italy does not necessarily mean that Italy is right for right now.
Well, because you have to consider.
There are a lot of things to consider.
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, what is your availability on dates? Do you have scheduling flexibility? If you must go in the summer, then you might not want to be in Rome when it's 100 degrees.
I don't
today
want to be in
you're
Rome
walking
in the
around.
summer. No, thank you.
And likewise, if you can only go over Christmas, you might not want to be in Norway over Christmas. Mm-hmm. When it's below zero every day. So think about that. Now, if you have flexibility, then you can do it the other way around. You can pick the time of year that suits your destination, right? But if you most people are going to have a period of time when they can go. And so I would focus on that period of time and think about what places are best for that period of time. And for me, and for us, I think weather is a big determining factor there, because you're going to be outside in a lot of things, most likely, and you want to be comfortable.
Right. And for us in Texas, not everybody watching this in Texas, but for those of us in Texas, one thing that we always think about is, okay, it's summer and it's 1 million degrees for 1,000 days in a row. So we want to go somewhere that is not going to be 1 million degrees, right? So it's sort of, I think of it in terms of opposite. In summer, go somewhere cooler. In winter, go somewhere warmer, right? So you kind of get a break. So I think it sounds like in terms of place, consider the time of year you want to go. And maybe you need to consider, like, how do you think narrow the scope of places? Right?
Well, there are other factors here, right? So one is, how long do you have? How long of a period of time? Do you have a week? Do you have 2 weeks? Do you have 3 days? What does that look like? Because it's going to take a certain amount of time. The farther you go, it's going to take longer to get there, and so you have to factor all of that in. Mm-hmm. Are you traveling with kids? Some places are a lot more kid-friendly than others, of course. So you have to take that into consideration.
Who's coming, maybe, is that question.
Yeah, right. Who is coming with you? Maybe it's a bachelor party. Maybe it's a bachelorette party, whatever. Different places are more appropriate for different types of people. And then, what activities do you like to do? If you are into art museums, then Paris is a great choice. If you're into alpine skiing, not so much. So Those are a bunch of ways to narrow the field. The only other thing I'll say about scheduling is if you do have flexibility, I really recommend traveling in the spring and fall. Those are going to be the best times for the most places, and they're not going to be full of tourists at that time.
Well, tell about that. Why? What's the tourist situation?
Well, it's pretty simple. I mean, in the summer is when there's no school in America and in a lot of other countries. And so that's when a lot of families have to travel. They don't have a choice if they're going to bring their kids. And so Americans all go to all the big popular tourist destinations then. And if you want to avoid lines and avoid congestion and avoid high prices, you can avoid those times.
Oh, that's a good point.
I was going to bring up time change because, like, do you have a rule of thumb, Drew, with like, okay, it's from the U.S., it's okay, like we can do Europe with no kids as long as it's like at least 5 days, or like, do you have a rule of thumb about that?
I would say if you can get a non-stop flight, then to go to Europe, I would want at least 4 days, but at the very minimum.
That's quick.
That's a pretty quick turnaround.
Like to London from Austin, because that good flight, you could do it.
No kids.
No
kids.
No kids. No kids. And as I think all the law moms out there know, traveling with kids is a completely different experience than traveling without kids.
Especially with the time zone, because they like don't get the memo.
Especially for young kids.
Ugh.
I mean, we went to Hawaii, and one of our kids just never adjusted.
Yeah,
The
he
entire
never
time.
he never was on the right schedule. We were just
Hawaii.
always upside down.
I feel like Hawaii, for some reason, is really brutal coming home, or it was.
It's worse coming back.
Well,
Whenever
explain
you travel- Yeah, so traveling east with time changes is worse than traveling west. And you'll notice this when you go to Europe too. When you go there, the jet lag is bad, but coming back, it's no big deal.
See, and I'd rather have it be that way because the end of a trip is always hard anyway.
Whatever.
You're coming back.
You're going to go to bed and get up for school. And
Right, and so like that's why Hawaii. That makes sense. Why Hawaii was so hard because it's like we had coming home from a long trip on top of this brutal jet lag, and we had little kids, and we were like, it was a red eye. We were sleeping with the kids on us or trying to sleep. Anyway, yes.
Well, I think one point I'm going to make about right here for like the law moms in particular, and Drew, now as a law Paul, you can probably have a different perspective than you used to on this, is when you're planning that window, in my own opinion, whatever it's worth, I'm not the expert, but just the experiencer, is you really want like a solid week. If you're going to Europe, in my mind, you want that spring break. You want that Thanksgiving break that we all have mostly now, where you've got the week and then the 2 weekends on either end. Now, pro tip for real moms is do not come back on Sunday before school starts on Monday. Okay? This is just a duh. You can get yourself in this like YOLO, you only live once idea, right? That you want to just maximize your time and you're going to roll in on Sunday at midnight and oh, well, everything will be fine. And you're thinking that as you're like 11 p.m. one night booking tickets, you're like, we'll be fine. You will hate yourself for doing that. I've done it. So what you want to make sure that you do is you come home on Saturday, give yourself Sunday to get these little heathens together, do some laundry, find a folder, where's your backpack, who's got, a project that's due, do we have any milk, like deal with that on Sunday. So leave your buffer day on the back end. If you need it, take them out of school on Friday before the week to get that extra day, to get your travel day on Friday, and then leave the Sunday to recover. Like that is a number one rule.
Yeah, like non-negotiable.
Yeah, no, don't do it otherwise.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe if there's like a really cool event or something in wherever you're going on Saturday, like you have to do the CBA of that, but anyway. Okay, so number one, where are we going? Who's going? And we're deciding who's going, how long we have.
Considering weather.
Consider weather.
And all of this is just to answer the first question of where.
Right.
and so there's a lot more work to do, but that is the biggest single decision you'll make throughout this whole process.
Where are we going?
Right. And the one other consideration for that is what is your budget?
Yeah,
right?
money.
I mean, and it's not like you have to pick a hard dollar figure, but obviously it's a lot more expensive to go to Paris than it is to go to Biloxi.
Paris, France, and Paris,
Yeah,
Texas.
right, sure.
Right.
So, keep that in mind.
Okay. What's step two?
All right, so once you have your location, your destination is picked out,
All right.
now you have to actually book it. You haven't done anything yet. Right?
Yeah, you just like have a hope.
Right. And so
That's me with my trip next week.
and Kate, you brought up, whether you use a travel agent.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think a lot of people who hate this process their immediate goal is to just throw their hands up and go to a travel agent.
Yeah.
And travel agents used to be more varied than they are today. It used to be that you could go to a travel agent and have them do sort of whatever part of the process you didn't want to do. I've found that these days that's not so much the case because it's so much easier to do it yourself that a lot of that business has just gone away for the professionals.
Yeah.
And so now what you have are these bespoke, custom, high-end travel agents who will design an entire itinerary for you for a fee. And they
It's
can be
bougie.
great.
It's pretty
Yes.
bougie, like expensive bouginess,
Mm-hmm.
like honeymoony
Yeah.
kind of
Mm-hmm.
I do not use these services
anymore.
because
We've done it.
we've done it. But what I learned is that you lose control over what you're doing. They're going to work with you and say that they will take all of your requests into consideration, everything like that. But at the end of the day, every change you make requires a phone call to them and a discussion with them and a substitution of something else and this and that, when you could have probably done it faster yourself from the beginning. You're also going to be put in hotels that are very expensive because those are the hotels the agent has a relationship with.
Mm-hmm.
And same with experiences and everything like that.
Now, let me say on that point, okay, just for everybody who's like, literally all these steps, if there's more than 2, I'm not doing it. I feel you on that. Like, honestly, if I didn't have Drew, I have a different perspective on the travel agent thing. We did it for, we went on a trip with our brother and sister-in-law, I don't know if they're watching, to Morocco. And we used a travel agent for that. I'm telling you, the cool stuff we got to do on that trip, Drew Bell was not going to be picking, okay? We got to drive these like four-wheeler dune buggy things through the desert and over like a rocky cliff situation. We got to stay in this riad, which is like a fancy word for like really cool Airbnb palace-y kind of thing. We got to stay in this really cool riad that we wouldn't have gotten to do. And the other thing we got to do was, I bet maybe you're watching this, like got to have a really cool guide who went with us to this country that for me was like, I remember the Van Texas part. Like, I wonder if anybody in Van Texas has been to Morocco. I never even, I honestly couldn't find it on a map. The idea of going there to me was very overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
But she hooked us up with this awesome local guide who's still my friend on Facebook, and he made our trip so much better. So I guess, yes, correct. If you're the right way to do is what Drew's saying. Also, some of the audience is going to be the sort of people who are like, I'd like to write a trek for this problem and have it handled. I found it to be pretty cool and a really good substitute if you don't want to develop this skill. It's like in a bougie way. So like keep in mind that, but I thought it was really pretty cool.
Yeah, and just to be clear, they have a place. They have a place, and feel free to use them. And that was probably the end of the lesson for you. And that's great. But just know if you do, you're going to spend more money, and you're going to have less control over it.
So I'm thinking of 3 trips because I'm very much like, I don't want to do it. Like, I really want to go and experience this amazing journey, but I just don't want to do the extra work involved with building it out. And Josh is not into that either. And so we've tried to hire like just, travel agents, but really our experience with them has been like, oh, we're going to put you in this place that I'm sure they're just getting like a commission from these big resorts or whatever, and I really don't like touristy. I want to like have an authentic trip. But I'm thinking of 3 trips that Josh and I took, and in each of those trips it just so happened that we found a local who cared about us having a good time early in the trip. When we went to Kauai, our friend Val, we showed up, and I booked this whole trip to Hawaii on Expedia in like an hour. I was just like, whatever I could find on like the airline, the
car, the
condo,
place.
everything. It was Expedia. It was cheap, but but then thank God we showed up, and Val was like the friend of Josh's old it's the sister of Josh's old coworker, and she's like, okay, you got your kids, you need to do this, this, and this, and this, and she helped us book it. When we went to Paris, someone we knew a woman who did walking tours, but it wasn't like one of these companies. Like it was her, and she'd only accept like 2 groups when in one tour. So you weren't with like all these people with the stupid headsets in. Like I could like get itchy.
Drew
when
loves
I'm,
himself
like,
a headset.
Oh God.
Are you kidding?
I get so itchy. So she like walked us around Paris, and we're like, okay, we got this much more time left. What do we do? She's like, okay, go do this tomorrow. Go do this the next day. And so we lucked out with no planning. And the same thing happened when we went to Jerusalem. We went to Israel, and we had this local tour guide who walked us around and then gave us tips on what to do next. So
Maybe that's the key.
Maybe that's the tip is like, you know, and maybe you don't find this person until you show up, but the local who cares about you having a
Well,
good
and on
authentic time.
TripAdvisor, that's a thing now with people who have these companies, I think, and different guides, right, Drew? You
Yeah.
could, okay, this is a good idea. Maybe there's a place where you could take the best of this. Like, I really think probably our experience in Morocco was as great because of what he did for our guide did for us. So perhaps you could look to find a guide, vet reviews, Google, there's all those mom blogs, like travel blog things, like, hey, I'm a mom and I got all these million kids and I'm gonna do this and that. And they list different guides and different things that they do. So maybe that could be helpful.
Yeah, so that experience, Kate, that you're describing is the best thing that can happen to you on a trip, right?
Yeah.
Because you're getting people who know the real scoop and who are doing a lot of that work for you, essentially. And that's great. That's the best thing that can happen. And we're going to talk about travel guides in just a second. But the travel guides, if you look at them, they will recommend local guides for you.
Yeah.
So you don't have to go through a travel agent to get a local guide. And in a lot of cases, local guides are going to be your best friend.
Well, and I see on the comments that our sister-in-law, Carolyn, is posting that it was best trip ever. Carolyn, if you're available, maybe you could even get the travel agent's Instagram and put it in here. Because she's in, I think in Austin, she really did a good job if you're interested.
Oh, yeah, I want that, Caroline.
Yeah, I don't know if you're available to do it, but if you could and you could put it in the chat, that would be awesome. Or Paula can help you. So, okay, so we're number one, we're finding out where we're going. We're considering who's all going with us. What was the second part?
we're actually planning the trip.
Oh, we're planning the trip. That's right. I selectively decided not to think about
This is the work. This is the part you hate the most. So yeah, but that's what you have to do it. If you're not going to send it to an agent, this is what you have to do. And I personally like to start with travel guides.
Okay.
And
so what's a travel guide?
So travel guides like this, right? This is Lonely.
I'll be Vanna.
Lonely Planet. Yeah, not a sponsor, but they could be.
Yeah, Lonely Planet. Obviously, you want to sponsor us. Okay, I can kind of show.
Or give us a job. But we were just talking about, like, wouldn't it be so great to be a Lonely Planet guidebook writer?
Yes.
What a job.
It would be. That's like my dream job.
Well, I feel like, Drew, I'll be the camera person.
Okay.
What's this? These are the Lonely Planet. List a couple others. Rick Steves.
Sure, there are Rick Steves, there's Fromers, there's other companies out there that do this. But Lonely Planet is a big one, and virtually any place that you're going to want to go is covered by some Lonely Planet.
We just like this one. We're not sponsored by Lonely Planet.
No, but they do. I went to their
might be.
house the other day, and they have, their bookshelf in their library, and it's just shelves and shelves and shelves of Lonely
Well, because
Planet
that's what we
all
do,
over.
right, Drew? If we think we're going to go on a trip, we've kind of like narrowed down to a few places of where. Drew's immediately goes to Amazon and buys a Lonely Planet to start to research. But I think that's a good idea. So that's one. If you think you're going to go somewhere, get the Lonely Planet and read. Now, let me show you all what's really cool in this book. So see it's like at the first of each of the books, it tells you the top experiences of the place. So you could just go through and pick. I feel like I'm a teacher. Like, let's read. Like, here's the top thing in Mexico. Like, if you're going to go to Mexico, because my brain needs pictures. So I'm like, Drew, give me the book. I'm going to go read the pictures. And then I go to the first few and I'm like, okay, that one. Please go figure out now what we're going to do. Because see, it shows you, like, I don't know, who doesn't want to go to that? Right? Okay.
Is that a waterfall?
Yeah,
I love me a good waterfall.
Maya
That's
ruins-
a cenote.
Cenote.
Yeah.
Well, I don't even know what that is,
gorgeous.
but I don't know why we're not going on that on this trip. But
We're the wrong
anyway,
part of Mexico for that.
Okay. So
Okay.
anyway, the book.
So
Get the book.
yeah, because I think a lot of people, I know yourself included, will go to blogs. That will be like their first step is to
Mom travel blog.
blog it.
Done.
And that's fine. And some blogs are great, and some blogs are less great. If you have a blog that you've relied on in the past and you trust what they say, then go for it. But in my experience, these books are much more reliable. These are the pros.
Yeah.
They've done all the research.
They get paid. They make money off of it. Like, it's their thing.
Yeah, and at least with Lonely Planet, they don't get kickbacks or anything like that. So I find that these guides are especially helpful for hotels and places to stay. That's like the best thing. And we've never been steered wrong by them.
Well, I think we should say because about hotels, our initial on different pages about the way hotels work.
Well, okay, I think you're talking about when we went to London.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so now this was not my fault, no matter what she's about to tell me. But we were, this is when we were dating.
Yeah, this is our whole crazy life.
Right, and so I was going to visit my friend Kevin in London.
Yeah, what's up, Kev? If you're watching.
Yes, and I had reserved a hotel room for myself. And
At what fine establishment?
it was at the Best Western in Wales.
They have Best Western.
Yes, they do.
Yes.
With a single bed.
Oh,
Yes.
And because I originally, to be fair, said no for some reason. When he invited me to go on the trip, I said no until my mom /Mammy/Peggy, if you're watching, was like, "Are you insane? You don't say no to go to trip to London with your boyfriend. Are you crazy?" So anyway, to be fair, I wasn't going to go at first, and then I decided I was going to go.
Yes, so the whole room was probably about 12
But he didn't
square
change
feet.
the reservation.
No, I did not change
That's the
the
point. So my first trip to London, you know where I stayed?
At the Best Western.
At the Best Western in a single bed with no air conditioner, and it was the summer.
You mean like a single, like a twin?
Literal. Drew would like to tell you it was an oversized twin. It was not. It wasn't. It was really a whole thing.
Good lot of cuddling.
So, well, okay, now that's the most extreme example. But even ongoing, we have this debate each time because Drew is his father's son. And he will think to himself, okay, right? I know that Carolyn, I'm sure, has a comment on that. Is like, hey, let's do the Google about the hotels. And he'll look in the book and everything. And this one's $50 less a night. It's the obvious choice. And I'm like, I want to pay $50 more a night than whatever you're thinking. Because to me, the comfy hotel sitch is the trip to me. If the hotel is a piece of crap, my brain, no matter how much money I have on the rest of the trip, it will think the trip was a piece of crap because the hotel was dirty or scary or weird or stinky or musty or there can be a lot of problems.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
We still have a little space between us.
And that's something to know about yourself, something to know about your spouse or your travel companion or whoever. The Lonely Planet recommendations really are good for that. The other thing to consider when you're going somewhere is whether to do a hotel at all.
Yeah.
Do a hotel or maybe do an Airbnb. In a lot of situations, an Airbnb is just going to be a better option, especially if you're traveling with kids.
Yeah.
Because, if you have 3 or 4 kids, you might need 3 hotel rooms, and that adds up very quickly, whereas you could get a house, like the last time we went to London.
Yes, very much. He did a very good job.
Where we got an entire townhouse for far less than it would have cost to have even 2 hotel rooms.
Yeah.
Because we brought, we had 3 kids, the baby stayed behind. Nanny assistant Paula came with us, so we were traveling in a crew. We were rolling a bunch of people deep, and the key there, y'all, is breakfast. If you're a mom, well, at least in my house, people wake up and they want to know what's for breakfast. And if you have to have this whole ordeal, get everybody dressed, find the socks and shoes, where's the scarf, I don't want to go there, and whatnot, it turns the whole trip inside out. But if you're at an Airbnb, you can, the night before, go get some milk, go get some cereal, go get some eggs, and your first full morning after you've done all this travel is so much easier. So I'm all about that situation.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah, and just don't forget about it as an option. Think about what it makes sense for your destination. And I would use the company Airbnb as opposed to VRBO.
Why is that?
Well, I've had experiences where VRBOs are harder to cancel.
Oh,
Like
really?
during COVID, our COVID
Airbnb
situation.
is very good about cancellation.
Oh, okay. I didn't know
Because
that.
we did the whole COVID trip, all of us were doing like crazy. Everybody went spring break, and then it fell apart. The Texas spring break, we had a lot more trouble with they say the Verbos than the Airbnbs, right?
Sure. Yes.
I'm so travel knowledgeable.
I know. Look
Are
at
you impressed?
I'm very, very impressed. Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Flights.
Wait, hang on. So we're booking the place. Oh, but the other positive of hotels, they come clean up.
Yes.
In case you're wondering, they don't come at the Airbnb and clean up. In most places. I guess in some countries, maybe they have that.
I've never
don't
seen
know.
that, but maybe.
It would be cool. Ideas for all you people out there. Okay. What's number 3 step?
So you need to get there, right? And usually that's going to involve a flight, especially if you're from Texas. If you're driving, that's great. Problem solved.
Yeah.
But
Push go on your car.
Yeah, but if you need a flight, and I know that in getting ready for this, you guys have told me that this is a part that sometimes is difficult for you.
Because yours like, how basic do I be
Yeah.
for this? Like, duh, everyone knows how. And I'm like, no, real, like literally. Besides, this is what we do. Google, flight to Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
What next? You know?
Yeah, I would do one step beyond.
Right? That's how it goes.
And then I'm like, that's too hard. I give up.
And you can use Google. Google has a search engine for this, Google Flights. But I use Kayak, and as we know, Kayak is an aggregator of searching for flights, so it's going to search all of the companies.
Now Southwest too, right?
It'll find Southwest, it just won't tell you the price.
Yeah. So Kayak, okay, it's like an aggregate. It's like a Google of flights.
Wait, I think they just added Southwest because I was on them
They
recently.
do.
Oh, okay.
But when you look for the price, it'll say info,
Uh-huh.
and so you actually have to go to Southwest website.
Yeah,
to find
got
out
it.
how much
Okay.
it's
But what it does, y'all, is it puts, and you can rank it by like cheapest, fastest, most bestest, something I forget, and it puts all of the different airlines in one place. So literally, if you're going to go book flights, solution, go to this Kayak website. They also have an app thing. You can set up alerts if you're trying to get to a certain place at a certain time and you're waiting for like cheaperness. Oh, and it'll tell you when to buy it. Oh, ask that because they want to know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's the deal? Like, do you know the deal? Why can't flights just be the same price?
Yeah, it's not
What the heck?
So
Is this an econ lesson?
I
You're gonna give us the economics lesson.
I mean, the deal is just the airlines are changing prices based on demand.
So mysterious.
Right.
Yeah.
They are intentionally mysterious about this.
Yes,
Yes.
of course they are. Yeah, they don't want you to know. They want you to be afraid of missing out on the price today,
Right.
and that it will get it more expensive tomorrow, so that you'll buy today
Yeah.
a non-refundable ticket, and which if you cancel, you only get a credit, right? And then there's a penalty. So yeah, they're doing that on purpose, of course. But there are differences between buying on certain days of the week. The prices tend to go up on the weekend
Because you're home.
because you're home,
Everybody's
and that's when
buying
most people are buying, right? And they are better on days like Tuesdays and Wednesdays when everyone's at work and not thinking about this.
Okay. All right.
Now, are you going to see a dramatic difference? Probably not.
Sometimes
Sometimes, though.
it's a lot more money.
And it's better to buy, obviously, we know it's generally better to buy farther out, but that's not even always true. Sometimes when they first announce the prices actually go down later.
Because people think like, and we ran into this recently with somebody who wasn't experienced in booking flights. Like, oh, it's 3 months ahead. If I buy now, it's going to be way cheaper. But you're saying that's not the case?
Not always. Not always. Now,
So what's the sweet spot?
there is none.
Oh,
really.
great.
You
Thanks.
that's
Trial and error.
the sweet spot, or at least none that I know of.
Uh-huh.
The sweet spot is to look at Kayak. They will have a recommendation about whether to buy or wait. I would just follow their recommendation.
Okay.
Yeah, so set the alert. And when it says buy, don't second guess yourself. Don't have like FOMO. Just when it says buy it. So I think this is what I would do if I didn't have Bruce to do it, is set up the alert for where you're going to go. And when it says buy, just buy
Do
it.
it. Okay.
Yeah.
All
Okay. So that's how you're going to get there. Planes, train, automobiles, whatever.
Okay, let's do a comments check real quick because
Okay.
Fidel's here. He says, "Hi, thanks for this great info. I'm not a mom, but still good info." Yeah, this
Yes.
is like everybody
Everybody.
benefits from this. Paula wants to know how to find and pick restaurants. We're going to talk about
that.
food.
We're gonna get that in just a second.
Catherine wants to know how to find the local favorites and avoid the tourist traps.
Okay, that's what to do when we
So-
get there. Let's do
Yeah.
that.
And then Paula says, I've also heard if you're searching online for tickets, you should do it in incognito mode. I've heard this too. So you see the lower prices.
No cookies.
Yeah. Is that what it is?
Like avoid the cookies.
and the biggest thing that's a great tip.
Good
And-
job, Paula.
And the biggest reason for that is they will track how many times you've searched for the same flight, and if you keep looking for it, they know you're interested.
So they're not going to give you the lower.
And they may-
Golly.
yeah.
This
Well,
thing
they're just running their business.
sneaky.
You're like all mad at them.
I am
So-
mad.
Again, it may or may not make a difference. at the end
You
of
Whole
the day.
thing makes me
You would
mad.
do it if you owned an airline. You would do that. Okay,
That's a good tip.
so yes, thanks for that, everybody. So now we picked where we've gotten there.
Well,
Like
not there yet.
we figured out how to get there.
Yes. Well, before you book that flight,
Oh.
you need to look at the schedule and think carefully about it.
Ah,
Right. This is something that you were touching on earlier with flying back on Sundays, but there are all kinds of other issues, especially traveling with kids.
yeah.
You have to remember how long is it going to take you to get to the airport, right? You're going to need to be there at least an hour ahead of time, generally for a domestic flight. For international, you want to allow more time than that, more like an hour and a half or 2 hours. And add on to that the travel time to get to the airport, as you get there. If you're traveling with kids, that just makes everything take.
My thought on this is, don't pick a flight that makes you leave your house earlier than you would normally leave to get to school. Because that's sort of like the earlier range of when kids are used to getting up and getting going and being like socks and shoes on out the door. So at our house, that's at 7:45, 7:50. Ideal world, this often doesn't happen. But ideally, don't pick something that makes you leave your house. So in Austin, we live like 20, 30 minutes from the airport. And if you want to be there an hour early for a domestic, an hour and a half, 7:45 plus an hour and a half would be ideal time.
You guys are loose. We're there like 3 hours.
We're
high flight anxiety over here.
Yeah. Get settled at the gate.
Yeah, I'm that person.
Yeah.
But that's okay. Do what you got to do to be comfortable. That's okay. I mean, that's up to you. The other thing to think about is connections, right?
Yeah.
Again, especially with kids, I would minimize connections. Although I know Hannah has a different perspective on this, and sometimes connections are good because it gives kids a chance to get up and get snacks and stuff.
Depends on their age. Well, and this was the thing when Drew and I were first dating too, about like, he'd be like, I don't want to connect. And I thought that was like such a bougie thing. Like, oh, must be nice to be able to just pay for direct flights all the time for you. And then I realized now, I'm like, oh man, I'm such a brat. Like, you're so right.
It's so nice.
It's so much better. Well, then you minimize bag problems. Like, if you're going to check a bag with all these kids, you want to bring snacks, you want to bring their favorite toy, whatever. Then making sure your bag gets there is primo important.
That's true.
Right. And then you leave less margin for error for airplane. And lately, since COVID too, airplane stuff is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So you leave less room for missing a connection, and then everything's all to crap.
Yeah, I'm big on the nonstop. There's a nonstop from Austin to Puerto Vallarta, Tuesdays and Saturdays only. So like,
yeah, hey,
you
you're
guys
gonna
were
do
like, you went with the connection. We were like, whatever. Our trip's gonna be Tuesday to Saturday. And I also just want to say, we're talking flights. We're not talking road trips or motorhome trips, but our family has done some motorhome tripping. We don't own a motorhome, but we borrowed one from a friend, and then we rented one. Hey, Josh, do you remember where we rented the motorhome? What site we used for that?
We'll think on it.
Yeah, I'll post it in the comments. But we rented a motorhome from this guy who was like very fastidious with his motorhome. That created some issues because we're not like, there were goldfish everywhere, and that really made him. He told us he was disappointed in us when we returned the motorhome. We're like, we paid a cleaning fee. Sorry about the goldfish, but motorhome journeys with families, like that was our COVID solution, and we had a blast.
Yeah. We've never done that.
We've never done that.
It's so fun with the kids. And then the tip I'd say on that is like KOA, just get the app, and then you've always got somewhere you can stop. And then like 5-6 hours, of driving each day is what works for us as a family. But
With little kids.
with the kids, yeah.
Okay. So we picked our flight. We thought about the schedule. What are we doing next?
Oh, we have a comment here. Fidel, this is good. Take an extra outfit in your carry-on.
Yes.
Ooh.
And he had a nightmare of a flight where luggage was lost to New York. Oh, it was like, it took 2 days, I think, right, to get there. Anyway, so extra
Change of outfit with underwear, a toothbrush.
Yeah.
Women like basic makeup so you don't feel all lit.
Yeah.
Maybe a face wash thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's true, because I've had a situation where a bag got lost for like 3 or 4 days.
Oof.
And you end up wearing the same clothes if you don't do anything else. So,
Yeah.
That'll ruin a trip.
At least have one change of outfits, even if it's a nightmare, like 3, 4, 5 day thing, which I know some of our friends had their bags lost for a bunch of days. At least then you have time to get to a store and get some new stuff once you get there.
Yeah.
Okay.
So now you're not done.
We're not done.
I'm
I'm tired from all of it.
If you have multiple destinations in your trip, right? If you're going to 3 cities or 2 cities or whatever, you have to figure out how to get between those places. as
Oh,
well.
God, yeah. See?
Well, and here's what I think. Okay, we need to do a pause here, Drew.
Yes.
We skipped a step. So I think what we should talk about is in terms of where this two place solution. Okay, when you have, because I think that's one of the biggest things that law moms are going to think about, the logistics, yes. But like your significant other is, let's say they're a mountain person. They want to go hike, they want to do the river raft. And then your other person is like I like to look at old statues. They're not old statues in the desert or in the mountain forest. Tell me, you can say if I'm lying. I'm telling the truth. And y'all, I don't know, I'm gonna get like, there's so many things I could say. But anyway, so when these two people, which we're very, like, to me, if a trip doesn't involve a slow, leisurely coffee, breakfast situation, if it doesn't involve peace and quiet outside with a cool breeze in the air, then to me, it was a waste of time. in my own heart. That's how I feel.
Mhm.
This is not how you feel. So like, you want to talk about how we came up with the solution for that? How and this goes into the two place trip.
Yeah, so this is something that we learned through experience, and what we've decided is it's hard to find a place that incorporates all of those things, right? So you go to an area and try to incorporate different stops, one of which may be focused on a mountain and a babbling brook or whatever.
I think that sounds lovely.
And the other
We'll
may,
go on our own trip.
I'm gonna go see all the babbling.
the other may hold the cultural treasures of millennia. You can say. But understanding that you're going to do the thing that matters most to you makes it easy to do the thing that matters most to the other. So that's
Yeah, and so that's right. So like both of us now respect, I mean, I'm kidding him, but like we are going to have some sort of like looking at old statues situation in basically any trip. So what we do is if we've got like 4-day weekend or more, we try to do two things. So for instance, when we went to Portland, we went and did in the city Portland things. We went to the Japanese garden thing. We went and saw the big bookstore, and we did walk around the town business. And we drove out to the mountain place.
Yeah, Mount Hood. We went to Mount Hood and did some hiking out there.
Yeah, and we got to have this little bitty one-roomy cabiny thing where you got to have coffee and watch the fog on the river. And we went on this like very long hike, which our hike stories are a whole other thing. This big hike. So we did two things in one. We got to do the city thing, and I appreciated parts of that. We got to do the hike thing, and you appreciated parts of that, and we were both happy.
That
Yeah.
sounds fantastic.
So 4 days or more, two places. What's the rule of thumb on the trip?
If you have a week or less, do not do more than 3.
Yeah.
That's too much.
Yeah, but two is we think good.
Yeah,
like one, and then midway you go. So say, but I think that's a lot of things that people don't think about. Drew, is like say you go to Italy, and you want to go to Rome, and you also want to go to the Tuscany.
Yeah.
Right. So you can do both, y'all, for real, and you can pull it off without it making you feel insane. So how would you go about doing that? So let's just do Rome and Tuscany, for example. If you want to go see the cool old, I don't even know what's called, circle Colosseum. I know. Like, shut up, man. And the church and everything. And then you also want to go to the winery.
Right.
So how do you do that?
Well, you would probably in that specific scenario, you would probably fly into Rome or Florence, the capital of Tuscany, and you'd probably fly out of the other.
So in and one, out the other.
So that you don't have to double back. And then you would probably rent a car or take a train in between. Taking a train is a great way if you can do it.
In Europe.
Yeah, in Europe. But even if you can make it work in the U.S. and the Northeast, you can take trains to places. And it's a great way. It's very low stress. You get to see a lot, and someone else is doing the driving. So
what I think the thing to keep in mind is just think about if you're flying in the U.S., like from city to city. Sometimes those flights are not that expensive. Because in my mind, there was a barrier to this. Like, it's so expensive to get all the way over to Rome. You
That's
mean I'm
true.
going to buy another plane ticket? Are you insane? Those flights, like there's their own Rome airplane, and you go from like this one to this one. It's not that expensive.
like less than $100.
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah.
Or like
Oh,
we did Rome to Sicily. That's a better example. So like the rock that the boot kicks is Sicily. So you can go from Rome here, fly in, and then go down to Sicily. It wasn't that much money, but then you leave out of the place that you go to. So you don't like go back and fly back out of Rome, which I think most people wouldn't get. Like you would do Rome, then go up and then back. Don't do that.
the other piece of advice I have, if you're going to do this 2-part, 1 part for one travel person and the other for the other, pick your companion's spot to be the last thing you do, because if you do it on the front end, they will not want to leave, and they will resent you for making them leave.
I don't know what you mean. Do you want to tell them what happened? Tell them what happened.
In Sicily?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Remember the part about me kind of being a brat about it?
this happened when we were in Sicily, when we were in Taormina at one of Hannah's favorite hotels, and we were there as planned for about 3 or 4 days.
And we went up and saw the bombas.
Yes.
The volcanoes.
on
Our
the-
guide kept saying bombas for bombs. Bombas.
Yeah, but then of course we moved on to Syracuse, which was lovely. But Hannah got all kind of bent out of shape for the first day or two because she thought we should have just stayed behind.
Well, we went to this really cool place. I was having the most fun, and then you made me leave early. I know that was the plan, but I didn't want to go. So I was kind of grumpy about, but I really just want to be back in the other place. And why'd you make me leave everything I love? And how come you're like it?
Okay,
Right.
so pro tip, put
Yeah.
Hannah's part on the end of the trip.
Yeah. If the more brattier one, put it on the back end, or else they'll never want to go.
Okay, we got some comments here. And a Facebook user, it doesn't tell us who, says always bring extra clothes, especially for the kids, jammies and a change
Yes.
at the airport. Love that
Love
tip. And then Paula says TikTok taught me airlines compensate for lost baggage so you can get reimbursed for necessities you purchased.
That's generally true. Yeah, they will generally give you some kind of a stipend so that you can buy certain things, or they'll reimburse you.
Oh, but nobody wants to be there.
And then you have to deal with
And
it.
it's an awful process. So-
I'm just thinking of a tip I learned from TikTok. I learned so much from TikTok, but it was one of these, tell us something that you can disclose now that you no longer work for your old company. And this woman who used to work for a big hotel, I forget which one, it was like Ritz or something, she said that we totally look down on the people who book their hotel room through the booking sites like the Expedia
Instead of direct.
instead of direct, and so you're going to get much poorer service.
You do.
From like even a place like where we are right now, that we're at the Westin in Puerto Vallarta, and you want to book, like even if you're looking for the rates on Expedia or whatever, book directly.
Yeah, I think that's generally true. I rarely use something like hotels.com.
Mhm.
These days, the rates are not generally any better. I mean, it used to be the case that you could get cheaper rates. These days, the hotels have adjusted.
Mhm.
And so, generally speaking, the rates you see on their website are going to be the best rates you're going to find.
Well-
Generally.
And canceling. Like if you book
Yes.
through
Yeah.
Expedia and your plane gets delayed and this whole thing, they're going to give you real drama about canceling versus hotel, especially if you have loyalty member like Drew's very like, I'm a Marriott status member. And his number one favorite thing.
Imagine Drew
No.
talking like
No,
that.
yes, he is. His number one favorite thing is to have status on any kind of like hotel, airlines. He's like, well, if you just had status like I do.
The truth is, it's Hannah's favorite thing, too. So,
You're turning red because I'm so right. It's really true. But they, like honestly, they will work with you on the cancels. So totally book direct through the airlines. Okay, so 2 spots maybe. What next?
another tip before we move on. If you're planning for a spouse, even if they tell you they want you to do the whole thing, do not surprise them.
Yeah.
Okay? Don't actually just do the whole thing without keeping them informed. Keep them in the loop, so that you'll get feedback about whether you're doing a good job.
Yeah, Josh and I are going to a trip to Seaside, Florida in June, and he was in charge of booking the condo, and he found this place he thought I was going to love, which was like right in the middle of the like market square where it was like right on top of a shop, and of course I love to shop, but I was like, that sounds like too many people. Like I want to get much closer to the beach, and actually we're going back to our motorhome days. We're gonna see if we can find a schoolie and drive a schoolie motorhome. We'll see. I'll update you guys on it.
Yes.
Well, I think that's a good point because Drew does the booking, but now we like talk about it as we go. That way I'm not like, wait, because then he wants my buy-in so I don't complain. So it's like, okay, this hotel, but you okayed it, per our email.
Two lawyers.
Yes.
What happens when two
Yes.
lawyers
No,
get
no.
married? So we should probably wrap up because we got the DJ starting at the
Yeah,
pool.
sorry if
So-
it sounds bad. What's our next couple things?
So there are 2 more things I want to talk about real quick. And the first is you mentioned restaurants and other sort of activities. I would say book as many of those as you can in advance, because the worst time to do that is when you're standing around and you have a bunch of hungry people looking at you. Where are we having lunch? Okay.
And you don't have to stick to it. You can
No.
change it, but have a plan.
Restaurant reservations are easy to cancel. You might as well make them ahead of time. That way you have something. Use your travel guide. They are your friend. The restaurant reservations in there are going to be good.
How was the restaurant last night that y'all ate at? That you
very
found
good.
out?
Awesome.
Was it really good?
Awesome.
Yeah.
And in Lonely Planet, there's a star. Kate asks, it does not mean 1 star. It means extra good. So just if it's in that book and it's a restaurant, it's going to be fine.
Even
So
though it's
there.
only 1 star,
It's
that star means
big
a lot.
Uno, big star road. Okay.
And even if it's a place that isn't really a reservation type place, have a plan of where you're going to go to eat. And look at what are you going to do on that particular day? What site are you going to see? Make sure it's not across the city from where you're thinking about eating lunch.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think, Drew, like to that point, and some of the meat of this is really important, is when you're planning the days, especially if there's a family, like how do you structure a day?
This is the second point that I wanted to.
Oh, you can't even hear the DJ. Okay, let's just take another minute. If you don't want to watch anymore, just you've already tuned us off anyway. But
Okay.
let's just take another minute. This is important.
Yeah, the other thing is you have to balance, because we keep saying plan and be prepared and all of this stuff. You have to balance that against doing the death march.
Don't be the
or
notebook
whatever.
Nazi.
Yes. Yeah. Do not have every 15 minutes, every 0.2 of every day planned out with activities, because it'll never happen. There's no point.
And you'll
in
be
doing
mad and you'll be frustrated because no one cares about your plan and all that.
and everybody will be too worried about sticking to the schedule and not worried about what they're actually doing there. So
I'm thinking about, we did this, we did a 2-week trip here in Vallarta with our kids and my parents, and we had all of these ideas about things to go do, like whale watching tours, and like we had a whole long list, and we had a pre-meeting, and everybody shared like what was high on their list. And then when we got here, we looked at the days and we're like, okay, this would be a good day to do this, and this would be a good, and then, some of the stuff we had, like the whale watching tours, we had to pre-book. But it was really great to just like have everybody work together at the start of the trip on what was really important to
Your top
each
ones.
person,
Yeah.
and so everybody got taken care of.
yeah, that's a great idea. The main thing is to identify your must-dos.
Right.
And
You do that.
Yeah, I do that. And identify them before you go. And you have to talk to the people you're going with to find out what their must-dos are. I would front load as much of those as possible, because if not, there's a chance you could not do them.
What does that mean, front load?
That means do them at the beginning of the trip, if possible.
Yeah.
And make reservations for those things if you need to. If you're
Because
going-
it's best to plan. What were you saying earlier?
Well, it's best to plan here and not there, right? I mean, you want to be doing the work when you have the time and when the reservations are available. If you
At
go,
home.
Right. If you go to Paris and you're trying to get into the Eiffel Tower on the same day, you're probably not going to be able to.
You look at it from the grass or whatever.
Yeah, and then you might go home having not seen it and having some kid in tears, right? So try to front load all of that stuff as much as you can so that you get it done. And then if there is extra stuff on the back end, you'll have time to do it. And that's great. But when you're planning activities, especially if you're traveling with kids, please do not do more than like 1 to 2 activities a day.
I'm one for us. It's one.
Yeah, I think it's best, like what we've learned is have one like gonna do and one if we have time, this would be nice to do. So
Yeah.
like we'll do something in the morning and then we can kind of do this more loosey-goosey thing in the afternoon, but like only one reservation-based thing in a day. And don't do it too early because not everybody's gonna want to wake up. Like you need to think about that. Like is it reasonable to ask all these children and everybody to be up and dressed and ready to go by 8 a.m. every day? The answer to that question is no. But maybe everybody could kind of agree by 9 we want to get going, and not like you don't want to leave this room. We have one good friend of ours who would sleep till 2 o'clock in the afternoon every day and has on trips. Like we are leaving at this time. If you don't come, that's up to you. But like the big picture is when you're going with kids, I think you do this so well. It's like have your kind of list, depending on how long, maybe it's 10 things. And maybe 5 of those are must-dos, and you do those across the 5 days. And then leaving these extras, and an idea, because you don't want to have this empty space. And if you're kind of like the de facto boss of it, everybody's going to look at you, whether you meant to take that role or not, and be like, so Mom, what are we doing?
You should have an answer to that question. But you should also be able to say, if they say, hey, Mom, I really, really, really love this. Can we do it? And it's not in your schedule. You should have room in your schedule to add.
Yeah, don't be so scheduled, because I think that people do this wrong. And they like make a notebook, and maybe they even laminate the schedule, and next we're doing this, and next we're doing that. That would make me completely miserable.
Yeah, totally.
So I think it's kind of that balance. You need to plan enough to do. Number one tip to me to have a successful trip, besides like the best hotel, local guide, is the restaurants. Get the book to find out where. Also, just like the Google, what's got the most stars and all that. Have a reservation that you can cancel. At least you have a plan. You don't have to do the reservation if you don't get too stuck on Drew Little gets stuck on his food reservations. But if you have people with different dietary things, like I'm a lactose and gluten person, I can't have any of that. So Drew thoughtfully takes that into consideration. Like, can Hannah eat here? If you have vegetarians with you or whatever, you need to try to make sure the place you're going to go can accommodate,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Okay, what other things we need to think about?
Those were the two things I wanted to make sure we talked about. If anyone has any other questions.
What about you, Kate? You got any other things you wanted to cover?
I feel complete. This is good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think in summary, my big takeaway, even as we were just talking about this, in my observations would be travel is a skill. And maybe you're going to decide to develop that skill, or maybe you're not. And what you can't expect is like this awesome trip to just come by either not doing it yourself, developing the skill, or delegating, hiring out, paying for someone else to do it. Like it's not just going to magically, you're going to have an amazing trip, right? So you have to put in the effort, just like literally everything else in all of life. And to do that, I would say as much kind of time ahead as possible, the better. And that's part of the fun, right? I know that one time my dad said this, like about surprising the kids with the trip. He's like, no, part of the fun is the anticipation.
Mm.
So think of it not just in this truly like metaphor of life, right? It's not just the destination, it's the journey. And part of the journey that you're on is working together, getting to know people better when you go on a trip, and coming together and having these really memorable experiences. And I think really practicing your like flexibility muscles, right? We know we're flexible because we've been flexible, right? Like that's how you know you have a trait, is you kind of look in the rear view mirror and you say, okay, I've been this way. And so things are going to go wrong. Like don't go in and be like, oh crap, whole trip's ruined because our flights are canceled. Like you're going to make everyone miserable, and you're going to go huffy puffy around you in this anxiety. Like keep in mind, your kids are watching you. It's a good time to share and to teach them how to behave when things don't go well. Are you going to be a drama llama and like freaking out and yelling at the gate agent? And what are we going to do? And everything's ruined now. Are you going to be like, hey, this is a cool experience. We're all going to learn together how to navigate this, and we're going to teach you. So when you're an adult, you know how to navigate this. And I think we've done a good job at this part. And one thing I know that happens as you do this more, you just like bite the bullet, do the work. Your people are going to get better at this. That's why now that we're like an hour to the plane, the kids and everything, they know how to get through security. They know how to have their stuff ready to go. And they're like looking at the people who are taking forever at the line because we were just like zooming through. So I think it's a really great opportunity to educate your kids in this more well-rounded way if you behave well. But a lot of people really don't behave well in the situation, and you'll ruin it. Okay, so don't be like that. Significant others, like maybe y'all could talk ahead of time. It's often the dads like kind of freaking out too. Like don't be like that, law Paul. Learn from the law moms and keep it cool.
Yeah, I love that. I love that.
All right, guys. So I think that wraps it up for episode 2 of Law Moms Out Loud. We're so happy that you joined us, Drew. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Good tips.
Good job. Very good job, Drew. You can go back to your day job, being a fancy lawyer and all that now. And we'll see you guys next time. I guess it's going to be in 2 more weeks, whatever that day is.
That's right. We'll see you.
Yeah, week after next. We'll see you back here for more Law Moms.
Thanks, guys.
Hoop law.